we're going after these people that led the coup, this anniversary of the murder of our president by a cabal, and this lie that they locked in place, that it was, a lone gunman. Anybody that still believes that, I think, is just not being honest, doesn't want to be part of this adult conversation. That 9/11 was done by some terrorists in the mountains in Afghanistan. President Trump has said, before he's done, we will know who brought those buildings down. And I don't think he's going to disappoint us. Hey, Jen, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Juan?
I am great. Hey, I just thought I'd, mention to you, we had talked off the air a little bit about some of the things that are coming here in the near future. And, the thing that I think people have to maybe temper their thoughts with coming into this holiday season and these next many weeks, Q is back posting. And so it's worth rethinking about what's this Q project really all about? What's at the core of it? Why Q of all letters? And in this particular season, you think about how come some kind of a mystery, some kind of a secret, how come they don't just, come right out in the open and say who they are and just present the information? Why has it got to be a secret group? Who's Q? Who's Q? He's got to reveal himself. He's got to come out right now and tell us who he is. This is ridiculous. Nobody should be hiding like that. And get all wound up. Well, who wants them to come out? Who wants Q, him or her or them to come out? It's actually a team. But who wants him to come out? Well, the fake media. So they can attack him, so they can, rail him against the wall, so they can stop that agency of government, those people inside government, from doing anything, and pick out their families to give them ridicule for being part of this exposure project. That's why they want to know. And at some level, within a zone of plausible denial, we call it PD, they got PD in this situation, plausible denial. When guys go in and do deep undercover things like that, have you, in a covert operation, giving yourself plausible denial in a difficult situation? So they've got plausible denial. Kind of looks like it's the president, but then again, he hasn't actually said it, but it kind of looks like it. But he hasn't actually said it. There's PD. We look at this, how did they even come up with the Q? Well, there's plausible denial about it, but it is interesting that when you look down from above on President Kennedy's gravesite, it's kind of like a Q. And within this cabal, these conspirators who exist in our government between elections, and they're over and above the regular GS level employees up to 17. This SES type group, Senior Executive Service, who's the group that holds power for continuity in government between administrations, between elections, or in case of some kind of national emergency. This deep state that's kind of running things behind the scenes, that is the crowd that the finger keeps getting pointed at, who was behind the the Kennedy assassination, when President Kennedy was gunned down, triangulated on, and killed because he was trying to go after this hidden hand that was trying to control us as a people, not just him as a president. See, people keep getting that wrong. They think that it was only against President Kennedy because he was doing certain things that they had to take him out. No, they were against us as a people because we elected a guy, and then he was trying to do what we, the electorate, wanted done, and they couldn't have that. They couldn't have us get control of our country back. So the guy that was the figurehead, trying to help us rein in government and make it the servant of the people as opposed to an oppressor of the people, a manager of the people, an overlord of the people, that guy has to go because he's going to get people thinking they actually run their own country and have decision power over their country. You can't have the cows running the barnyard. So this Q acronym, one of the interesting things, the number of Osiris, who's this focal point of the cult, the Washington Monument, the center of Washington, D.C., the number of Osiris is 17. That was the death and resurrection day of Osiris. When ISIS went out, found all the parts and pieces of his body except for his penis, and she fashioned one out of stone and has sex with it and then has a child by him, the dead corpse. You realize this is a religion that is based in the capital of our country. And the religion is built upon a belief that the child, the gods they worship, were born through a death ritual ceremony. It's all based on death. Those that hate God love death. The Q drops that occurred a couple days ago, saying that this is a battle against principalities and powers of darkness in high places. Absolutely true. This is a spiritual battle. I've said it with your audience and other audiences, Jennifer, that this is about a heavenly course or a hellish course. So we look at this Q project. Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet in English. And that 17th letter, it's the Osiris number. But we're reversing the magic, unwinding the spells that have been cast on us as a country, going back to the core, re-owning the numbers for ourselves. It's like I've mentioned to your audience before, Jennifer, 5 to Christians from a biblical perspective, from a Jewish perspective, including a Muslim perspective, Old Testament. 5 is the number of grace from a godly perspective, a divine perspective. But to this cult, the occult, this cult that has rooted itself into our government, this deep state, this dark state that is ruling and controlling us and through us in our efforts in the world, that dark state for 5, that's the number of death to enemies and defense. That's why our Pentagon has 5 sides. So these numbers mean things. If we're going to own these numbers back, starting with Q, that's this most important number that the center of Washington, D.C. is built around. And the grave site of President Kennedy, if you want to look at that as a Q, that was them putting their stamp like a boot print over his body. We did this. Gotcha. But the reversing the spell, the holding this back. Remember, when we talk about mystery sites and black magic and hidden secrets, What's the most secret site in North America, arguably, from a military perspective? Well, it's Area 51. You talked about it the other day in Representative Gossard's tweet, where he artfully says Epstein didn't kill himself. His tweets. That was beautiful. That was so, apropos. But he had the 51 in there, a deep dark secret. Well, what's 51? 3 times 17. What's our super secret military site here in the U.S.? Area 51. So they stamp their numbers all over the place. And why 51? Why 3 times 17? Because in the occult, 3 times magnification of a spell is the maximum power of a spell. If you're going to do a spell, if you're going to do a ritual, if you're going to do magic, you do it with 3 times magnification. You do the exact spell, but then you do it 3 times to get it the maximum power and project it as hard as possible. So 3 times 17, the Osiris number, Area 51 is the maximum power of the spell, the maximum dark magic, the maximum mystery. 17 is this core number to this cult. So by owning that number back for ourselves, that's a big deal. So what's the Q project in a bigger sense? What's it all about? It's about rooting out this deep state, this 17 state, and owning it back for ourselves. And how are you going to do that? What is in? I love the work that the guys have done putting together this Q monitoring site. It's not where the Q drops are at, but they collect them and kind of catalog them for people to go look at. So we look at these sites. The one that I personally enjoy looking at because it's just easy to view and reference. It's not as hard as getting onto 8kun or 8chan previously, and they catalog all the Q drops for us to be able to go quickly and reference. And that's this qmap.pub site. And they have a lot of categories in there where they've got research and memes and all sorts of things. So you can look right there quickly and see the drops, and they're real because they vet and make sure that they're real drops, not fakes, and give them a number. So they have an area there called sealed indictments. And not very many people have been paying that close of attention to that, but I watch it pretty carefully. And they update it from time to time. So these sealed indictments are cases that have been presented to a grand jury. A grand jury has listened to evidence from a prosecutor in a federal grand jury and determined that a felony level crime appears to have occurred, that the evidence warrants issuing a indictment or kind of a finding of fact, if you will, that shows that there's enough information there that warrants a trial to determine if what they've seen rises to the level of actually being a crime. But it appears that there's evidence of a crime enough to issue a warrant, go out and take a person into custody, and then compel them to go to trial and have them be able to present a defense and the prosecution do a prosecution for this felony level federal crime. So it's kind of an involved process, and it doesn't apply to like a civil matter. You didn't pay a credit card bill or your gas bill. It's not a misdemeanor. I was speeding, going too fast on the interstate, and I didn't pay my traffic ticket, or something like that. It has to be felony or greater. Bribery, extortion, racketeering, fraud in some kind of a federal matter, crossing state lines. And so in a normal year, over many, many, many decades, on a running average, those types of sealed cases usually only amount to 1,500 or so, kind of as a running average in all the judicial districts around the country, which it's like in the 90s. I can't remember, it's 93 or 7 or something like that. Judicial districts around the country where cases can be presented to a grand jury in that location, and then the grand jury look at it and say, yes, evidence of a crime is here, and this person should be, the prosecutor's correct, this person should be brought in, charged, and go through the court process. But that 1,500 or so average, sometimes it spikes a little bit. You might have had a mafia prosecution, drug dealing organization, etc., and have more than normal. And why are they sealed? They're sealed because if it's revealed that this person, somebody has been presented, an initial person, in the course of seeing that evidence, there may be other people where the prosecutor hasn't been able to finish the case. You could have undercover people, you could have new evidence still coming in. So you hear the case involving this one person or organization, and the grand jury does a vote, and if it's a unanimous vote, then they give a bill of indictment. I'm not saying the exact correct term, but it's not my expertise. There's other people in legal arena that'll give you the exact way that it reads. And then a warrant can be sworn out, an arrest warrant. But all of the details given to the grand jury are then sealed, and they're not released until the person has actually been arrested and booked, and the charges are, they're aware of those charges, and that's when the unsealing begins. Right now, according to the latest that I saw just yesterday, there's 134,500, I believe it was, sealed indictments out there waiting to be served, or nearly 100 times the normal running average. Now, you got to think about that, Jennifer. It's not 100% more. It's not 10 times more. It's almost 100 times what's normally there on a week to week, month to month, year to year basis is a rolling running average, as I understand it. And I know that there's some people out there that have been questioning this number. The way that the folks over at QMAP.pub have arrived at that number is they literally contacted every single jurisdiction and asked how many sealed indictments are in the float waiting to be served that are sealed up. We don't know all the details on it. We don't know who's involved. We don't know what it's about. We don't know, anything about it because it's, it's legally sealed and not, discoverable until those people are picked up and booked. So with that in mind, if we're understanding the figures correctly, and I think we are, and it's 100 times, even if it's only 50 times the running average, it's a huge number. It's a huge discrepancy from the norm. Now, with that, one of the things that we also have to look at is that if you have that many people being charged, if they're looking at cases, are these cases kind of similar? And I would contend that a large majority of those cases are of a very similar nature. And I believe, personally, that they relate to election fraud, vote fraud, where votes are being miscounted, false ballots are being put in place, rigging of election devices, voting devices is occurring, recording of votes is not occurring truthfully. Lots of different ways that can be read. whatever those crimes center around primarily. The other thing is that with that large number of people or indictments, it probably also includes a number of RICO type of organizations. So the Racketeer Influenced Corrupt Organization Act was enacted back in like 1970, and then a lot of states adopted those rules, those laws for state actions. But as a federal crime, chargeable crime, it was aimed at mafia. And the idea with the mafia was maybe a guy goes out and does a hit, or he's doing racketeering, or some kind of fixing in gambling. Well, if you caught the guys that actually did the deed, oftentimes you couldn't get back to the mob boss because he's insulated. He wasn't at the murder scene. He wasn't doing the racketeering work directly himself. He had operatives that were doing that. And so he'd be insulated. And the organization would stay intact even though you got various other players. Now, with that RICO Act, it allowed us to go back at the people organizing these things, supervising them, controlling them, and to take out the actual mob bosses. And it included going after political, governmental organizations and people in these locations that were themselves involved in criminal conspiracies from their positions of authority in government, conspiracies under color of authority. And there have been prosecutions occurring, somewhat regularly ever since the act was put in place. This situation right now is far more developed and advanced than anything that has ever occurred in our country prior to this point in time. One of the things that is virtually gone unnoticed from the election last year, 2018, which was the interim election between the every 4-year presidential election, was that a couple of months, a month and a half, I think it was, prior to the election, the president, our president, President Trump, allowed for a task force that involved every federal agency with investigative authority, 16 different agencies, plus an oversight agency, which makes the 17. But again, these people love their numbers, and they've incorporated that across the spectrum in our country, in our government. They're little hidden fingerprints that they're in control. So we got 17, investigative agencies, 16 plus the overriding controlling agency. And the president directed all of them to pool their efforts and focus on vote fraud and election fraud. And they did. And everybody since then thought, well, there's been a few prosecutions, there's been a couple little person here, a little person there picked up for miscounting the vote, for putting some fake ballots in, things like that. Nothing much. Let me tell you something. You don't put all those agencies with essentially an unlimited budget, that kind of a problem, and not get stuff. Not in the world that we've been living in, not with the kind of fraud that has been going on in plain sight for a very long time. So, how come we haven't seen very much of it so far? And I would contend to you, Jennifer, that it's because they've been building out those cases. And there's so many of them. There's so much involved. And then fleshing out the networks, the organizational plan, up to the very top leaders who are orchestrating these things, monitoring and orchestrating and managing how this vote fraud was being played out against the American people. And those cases have taken a bit to flesh out. But because they are so intricate, so involved, and so many players, you couldn't stop with just a couple of the low-level people and bring them in, charge them, and you're all done. I think a lot of those sealed indictments relate to vote fraud. And again, it goes back to this major coup that happened with President Kennedy when control was taken from us, the electorate, into these people managing the coup, managing the government over us. And we're fighting to get that back, to reverse the effects of that coup against the American people. In this moment, many of the people in this audience, whether they realize it now or not, should be preparing themselves mentally, spiritually, because they will be called on to sit on juries where these crimes are going to be heard. These people are going to get their day in a court with a jury of their peers as corrupt organizations to steal your vote. You know, if somebody puts in one false ballot, that means that one person in the electorate's vote was nullified. And they're always to one side. So if you have those votes going to one side only, you can throw an election, you get 10,000 votes wrong, that's, 20,000 votes total, 10,000 going to the other side and nullifying your 10,000. It's a shift of 20,000 votes. If you're having these kind of things over and over and over, a lot of these elections are very thin. Changes the nature of the country. And we look at what happened with changing the president. Look at what's happening with our President Trump. He is bringing in certain types of leaders around him, going after certain things. There's a certain crowd that surrounds him. You change that president and the crowd down below him all starts changing also. What are we having to root out with these hearings right now? Who's being exposed? All of these hidden players that behind the scenes are working meticulously to keep the government operating in a certain direction with a certain bent against what this current administration, what this president's trying to do, trying to counter him. And they're being exposed right now. Those votes have been being nullified. We're about to see that change. People are going to be on juries, and we're going to root these people out and get our government back. That's the Q operation, to expose the corruption, the corrupt people, these hidden organizations in our society, in our government, that are working against the broader interests of the people. And you'll notice that so many of them are literally ungodly. They don't have a conscience about the things they're doing. And so when the Q team quotes a scripture and says it's a spiritual war, it really is. There's a scripture that I've mentioned before, I think even on your show. Who will be valiant for justice sake? And that's the challenge to your audience and similar. We're about to see these prosecutions begin, these sealed indictments being unsealed. Why? Because they are unsealed after the person is in custody and been booked. And then they're unsealed. And we're going to see a large number of people suddenly incarcerated. And maybe we'll see the arrests, maybe we won't at the moment they happen. we may understand or not understand, but they won't be in complete secret. Those people that think there's going to be some secret trials and nobody's going to hear about it, and people are going to be arrested everywhere, nobody knows what's going on. You're not picking up 135,000 people off the street and nobody knows what's going on. And conversely, let me just add one other detail, Jennifer. An indictment can have multiple people on a single indictment. Conversely, one person can have multiple indictments against them. We don't know what the true number is going to be, but it's going to be radically higher than anything we've ever seen before, is the way it's looking. And we need to be ready for that, and then within our community, this Q community, understand that there's going to be a lot of questions amongst our neighbors, friends, and other people. And they're going to be, trying to figure out what this is all about, make sense of it. This isn't a time for gloating, I told you so. This isn't a time for, I knew this was going to happen, I told you this was going to happen. Take a deep breath. Relax. A lot of people are just now waking up. It's not about I told you so. It's about being available to give perspective, to be a fellow citizen, and understand that a lot of those people that will just then be waking up will also be called to be jurists in these proceedings. Some of them will go to military courts and tribunals because some of what we're seeing is treason. These plots against the president and against us as citizens, all of us, they weren't just going after Trump, they were going after us in order to steal an election from us, to force us to accept a candidate that would do what they wanted, because they concocted these schemes on foreign soil. Specifically London, primarily, but other countries also. And as that comes out, people need to realize, yes, these foreign masters, these globalists, wanted to force us to accept their will and their leaders to do things their way. And we're supposed to just go along with it as sheep. And we're going to get the chance to reverse, to unwind these spells that have been directed against us, this magic, and to get our country back. And some of the people we're going to have to rely on to listen to facts as jurists and come to decisions are people that are just now going to be waking up. We don't want to be unavailable to them to help them to understand, to see what's happening, to do the mental calculation so that as they're called on, they can come to American-centered decisions that are in the best interest of America and each other and, frankly, the world. Because the world is watching. The world is watching how we will deal with this so they themselves will be able to do the same thing in their own local environment. Because these people are trying to control the whole world. We're just one of them. And in this season, in this moment, with the Q operation coming back online, with these arrests just moments away, what are we coming to as far as an anniversary as a country? The day the coup went to a whole new level in our lifetime and killed our president, who was trying to work in our behalf to keep us from war, keep us from nuclear conflict, and was fighting these people internally, as President Eisenhower said in his speech so famously. This military industrial, and today we would have political media complex that's trying to control us and working day and night to engineer a way to keep their control over us, over our minds, over our hearts, over our country, over our physical energy, like vampires. do their bidding their way. And it's sites like yours, Jennifer, where by presenting this information, we reverse the magic, unwind it. Jensen. Does that work for you, Jennifer? Am I getting all the information you needed to hear?
Yes. When Q posted recently about indictments coming with 2019 in brackets. So, are we looking at the next 6 weeks, or how should we interpret that?
Well, the indictments are coming. I think that's probably most specifically referring to some of the activity that's been exposed in these congressional hearings.
Okay.
And that there's more indictments to come. We're not done at 134,500. There's more to come. But it can also be read that these indictments that are sealed are coming as actual indictments to be served. And so I think you can read that either way. I don't think we're anywhere close to done identifying all of the criminal activity and criminals that we are going up against. We're nowhere close to being done. But we're reaching a point, there's a point where you have to finally start the process in earnest. And while there's been people being picked up, things being exposed around the country, especially go to the sex crimes and against children, things like that, some of the local election fraud, etc. They've been diligently exposing and prosecuting those things, starting prosecutions. But this is something going to some much broader, deeper level. And so, yes, I think the indictments that are about to come, much more than just the ones that are currently there waiting with sealed indictments. And not all of those are going to get served here in this calendar year, but there's many that will. Again, I anticipated many of those to happen last year during the Thanksgiving to Christmas period. And I did a couple of shows over at Able Danger and Housewives talking about what the Q team has written telegraphed into their communications about the revolutionary period as a country and going after literally the Brits who were controlling us. And here we are in a situation where, frankly, it's Brits, people in Britain. Halper was working out of Cambridge in Britain, dual citizenship. These intelligence agencies were really being managed out of Britain. That was their place to go hide out with Comey and FBI and Brennan and all these players. Halper was a tool of Brennan. This was down in Italy and Greece. These connections, and Halper using somebody out of Turkey, a female spy out of Turkey. Also Mossad's in there. CIA, MI5 and 6, FBI, and Mossad, and all the Five Eyes. They were all involved in this operation, trying to manage us as a country from foreign soil. So, we're going to go back and take back our country from these foreign operators. By the way, just as an aside, we go back, and I've talked pretty extensively about, certainly this revolutionary period as a country, and then the Q team's references to the Revolutionary War. And those dates that they frequently cite are these dates in that November-December era. The other thing is that we're talking about election fraud. Still, we haven't gotten justice on the whole Fuddy epic, Loretta Fuddy. This is a war with people inside CIA. The sub that was brought in to deploy the vehicles that were used, these underwater vehicles, at that crash site. why. That was maybe the misuse of those military assets in this hoax of this plane crash. Those are military crimes. The funny thing isn't over. And that was intended, designed to fool people into thinking that President Obama was legitimately able, from a legal standpoint, to be president. That was, again, a type of election fraud. We were frauded there. They managed the fraud. How much of that might be in these indictments? I think it's there. I think we got pieces of it there. And then there's crimes against children. There's crimes to get us into these conflicts in the Mideast with chemical weapons and moving weapons out of Libya. Libya was actually behind the scenes. Gaddafi was acting as a aid and assistant to our intelligence agencies. People out of Libya were talking to our people 2-3 times a day, giving us information on the Mideast terrorists. Behind the scenes, Gaddafi and his son Saif were trying to be as cooperative possible under the circumstances, and yet we, people in our government, in our State Department, in our military, managed an operation to take them out of power unlawfully, and the people in Libya have paid a horrendous price. The whole Syria operation, even continuing now, and trying to unwind that. This origin devices, what are we going to find out about that as those records get released? And are there RICO crimes included in these sealed indictments? I think so. I think we have to be prepared for a lot of unexpected twists and turns. And but I think the main thing I wanted to leave with your audience right this moment, we're in that season. We're going after these people that led the coup, this anniversary of the murder of our president by a cabal, and this lie that they locked in place, that it was, a lone gunman. Anybody that still believes that, I think, is just not being honest, doesn't want to be part of this adult conversation. That 9/11 was done by some terrorists in the mountains in Afghanistan. President Trump has said, before he's done, we will know who brought those buildings down. And I don't think he's going to disappoint us. So with that in mind, we have all sorts of things that could be in those indictments that would be revealed, that cross the gamut, that go to frauds against us and the people and against the world, and will shock the world. And we need to be prepared to have those conversations with our friends and neighbors, people we work with, in a collected, sane way, not dancing on somebody's grave because they were wrong and we were right, not unapproachable because we're too full of ourselves because we knew it before anybody else did. Take a deep breath. If you woke up a little earlier than everybody else, or people around you, a little humility will go a long ways. And be thankful that for some God-inspired reason, in this spiritual war, which we really are in, that you're available to those people. Make yourself available to have these conversations as they wake up and get their bearings. You and I, Jennifer, talked about a situation that I had years ago where I was dehydrated, got disoriented after an extended period of very intensive travel. And that I literally was hallucinating through that dehydration. It was very real to me how you can lose your bearings, and it takes a bit to regather them. and get the details right. For a lot of the people around us, it's not because they're the worst person in the world, they weren't paying attention or whatever. They're under a spell, they're in an illusion. They're, dehydrated. Be there to give a cool glass of water, give them a few moments to collect themselves, figure out their surroundings, and reorient themselves as we, as a nation, reorient ourselves and take to our feet to defeat these monsters in our midst, these giants, and cut them back down to size, incarcerate them, cleanse our country back out from these evils done in our name, and then be the light to the world to bring the world back into right relationship with our Creator. That's what I have for you, Jennifer.
That's a very good one.
Does that work for you?
Yes, it's very good information. I'm just itching to ask this, and I don't know if I'll put this in the video, but I just.
Oh, you're welcome to. If you like it, anything we talk about is yours.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, what? No, but this question is, as these indictments pile up, I just feel like, I'm asking myself, but I feel like the audience is also asking, but when are the arrests? Are the arrests right around the corner? Because I think they're going to be asking that.
Sure. Well, again, we're in that season where the Q team is leaving themselves options. And there's a lot of things that have happened that were sort of unpredictable. You didn't know quite how it was going to shake out, what witness might turn a different way. All I can say is that we are in the harvest season. You look out across the field, some of them are at lower elevations, some of them are at higher, maybe some are more moist or dry, and it tells you where you've got to start with harvesting. But it's a process. And then there's kind of a large window, depending on where you're at. This team, from a prosecutorial standpoint, the president isn't telling them that they have to arrest by a certain date or do certain things necessarily. There may be some from the military side where you have more ready control on that legally, and from an optics standpoint, that it's, okay. But from an optics standpoint, we're not slaves to the numbers. We're not hitting dates absolutely, but we're within a window, a season. And we're in that harvest season right now. And that's kind of an important distinction. We can look and see that, the storm is upon us. This is all coming to a head. And it's not going to play very much longer over in Congress. There's not a there, obviously. It's becoming more apparent by the day. And so as they run out of, their latest gotcha fairy tale, and it's clearer and clearer for everyone to see just who it is that we're dealing with, then we can proceed with these prosecutions. So how long? I think we see a lot of them. It's a year later than I anticipated, but I think during this holiday season, some of the crimes are going to involve politicians at the federal level. And you can't arrest congressional members, senators, while they're in session. So they'll be taking the holiday recess. If some of these crimes involve federal crimes involving politicians at the federal level, you might only realistically, reasonably be able to arrest them during that period. And you may not want to arrest one person where another person might get away or not be reachable by you legally. So you hold some of those arrests until you can get them all in a very narrow window. So again, I was wrong last year. I don't know if I'll be wrong again this year, but my gut is that we're going to see those during this holiday season here shortly. And then I'll just throw it out there. I think it gets more difficult to proceed with the political arrests if those are there, and I think they are for a lot of reasons, including, as I just mentioned, these Mideast crimes related to the Arab Spring and trying to start a war in Syria. Those crimes, some politicians are going to need to be arrested, and trials, if you wait into the election season next year, it's almost like you've made an unfair play, because the parties, both Democrat and Republican, because there's some Republicans that are in there too, a lot of them have been weeded out, but there's still a few. The parties need to be able to have enough time to bring up other candidates to run for some of those offices. And if you wait too late, it looks like you're playing unfair. There's a tinge of that, I think. And so if you've got the material, the information to do an arrest, at some point it has to mature to a timely moment to do that. And after you get past the first of the year, it becomes harder and harder for it not to be seen as a low blow hit, too close to the election, trying to throw it as you get closer. And I don't think they're going to play that way. I think that they're going to be here on the side of, let's get this done and start waiting this out. We've got the information, and we don't want the election twisted. They've played their shot. They had their games in Congress. They brought it to a head. We'll finish that, and then start unsealing indictments and bringing additional indictments that are served rather quickly. And we're in that season. And when it says indictments 2019, the only other qualifier that I would put in there is that some deceptions are necessary. The Q team has said that repeatedly and warned people about that. And part of the reason is because if you look at over the last many months, let alone the last couple of years, a lot of these players, thinking they were going to get picked up any minute or stuff was going to be exposed, FISA, things like that, they've played other cards, other players that were in the machine, in the system, that were hiding out, waiting to jab us in the back somehow to play their part. Those tools, those players have been exposing themselves. Those cards have been played. All their cards are being put on the table. All their secret little devices and connections and communications have been being played to a very large extent. If you're going after the cancer, if we're calling this a cancer, Jennifer, then you have to be thorough and get it all, or it'll be back.
Yeah.
And so this is a very intricate surgery. This word of God is sharper than any two-edged sword. It cuts very finely. It divides very finely. And it's a very intricate moment to go in there carefully and to pull up the bad seed at the harvest time and not before, so as not to damage the good seed, separate it apart, and put the good in one pile and the bad in the other. But you wait till the harvest. That's the biblical scriptural principle. We're at harvest time. So let's separate the bad seed out. Let them show themselves. They've come to full maturity. It's obvious to see who they are. They're revealing what they had. And for the good people, the good seed to also be seen and to express and do what they do. This is this moment we're in. And while the arrests, I think, are going to happen shortly, the playing out, the exposure, the discussion on these things will take a very long time. Probably the rest of this president's next term. But a lot of it will play out, and we'll be aware of it during this election cycle. And people are going to, this next election is very much so going to be a choice between good and evil. And not everybody's going to choose good. Just because it's clear good and evil doesn't mean that some people don't choose evil. But at least they'll have to own it, and it won't be in the dark. And if people want to choose that way, other people are going to say no and walk away. So putting it all out there for everyone to see, letting it be seen. And I've said this in other locations several times, there's not going to be secret trials to a great extent, because that's part of the cleansing of the country. There will be some. There will be some things that have to be done in secret because there's some things that just shouldn't be known. But there's other things that are going to be people are going to have to know about. And we, in order to have this cleansing of the country, this washing clean of the country, this choice between good and evil, people have to see what the evil is that's been done in their name, with their life energy. Your tax money is your life energy. You only have so much. You can never get it back again. You can't recollect those moments of your life energy that you've spent to this point in time if it's going into support people doing evil, dastardly things here or someplace else far removed that you don't even ever really know about it, but was your energy behind it. You have a responsibility being done in your name as a country. The things that have been going on in countries around the world where these people are behind it, this deep state, much of it is completely unconscionable. And you personally, we as an electorate, the citizens, will not escape scrutiny in some final divine judgment for not having taken action once we know what we're responsible for, where our energies have gone, if we didn't fight to take it back. And so, this is what we have to do. This is our mission at this point in time. Not just for ourselves, but for people around the world and our children and children that aren't even born yet. They will live with whatever we do, good or bad. And I believe that on the whole, that our population is good. De Tocqueville came over to America, and he traveled America after we had been born as a nation. He went all through the countryside and met people and talked to people, business owners, politicians, people in churches, mothers, schools. He traveled the country, lived in people's homes.
Thanks.
And what he said, what his conclusion was, after all of this travel, looking at America coming over from France, what he said was that it was this innate goodness of America at this grassroots core level that made America so great. And from his perspective, he said, America will cease to be good, or cease to be great, America will cease to be great when America ceases to be good. And right now, that's this moment. Are we, as individuals, as people, seeking to be good? Are we actually being good? Are our energies, our life energies, doing good things? Or are our life energies being sucked off of us and diverted and used to do evil? I mean, really evil. Horrible evils for somebody else, other groups, for their globalist ambitions. And if we seek to be great, the road to making America great again, as de Tocqueville saw it, was that we, at this core level, must be good again. And that's what this is all about. If we're good again, in this kind of a basic, generic sense, we'll be great, and we'll fulfill our mission as a people to the world. Light and salt to the world. That's my wish for your audience, for all of us. We can cleanse this evil, be good, and on that path, find greatness again.
Amen.